You're listening to the Superpower Podcast, Superpower Kids Edition, where author, philanthropist, and Superpower Kids founder Neva Lee Recla inspires kids to discover their superpowers and change the world.
Hi everyone, this is your Superpower Kid, Neva Lee Recla. I'm so excited for today's interview. We are talking about how your story can change the world. Now, listening to that question, how can your story change the world? Well, on today's interview, we are going to be talking about just that. Our guest today is Ayn Cates Sullivan, and she is awesome. She is a bestseller, a writer. She is a new podcast host of Wisdom of the Ages, coming soon in the Superpower Up Network. And she also wrote a book that I got to read called Ella's Magic, and it talks about how a young girl has superpowers and her family basically tries to hide it from her, and they try to help her hide it, but then she learns how to accept herself and how to appreciate others around her. It's an amazing book. So without further ado, will you help me welcome our guest, Ayn? Hi.
Hi, this is Magic. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
I'm so glad you read Ella's Magic. I'm so glad you read it and you got it. You got the message. That's so awesome.
It was really awesome because it reminded me of every superpower movie we watch, and it kind of reminded me almost of real life, like how sometimes people try to cover up themselves or they try to hide their other friends who they really are, and they try to cover up their entire selves. But then it's a beautiful gift when people get to learn how to just uncover it and be who they are and not really care about what others think. So I think that's awesome. So
Yay.
I can already tell you have a lot of superpowers, but can you name a few?
Well, I like to say that my favorite superpower is air, because I don't have it with me, but I have a white swan feather. And when I'm writing, I take out my white swan feather and I close my eyes and I imagine that I'm flying through the universe and I'm collecting stories and gemstones and precious gifts for all the people in the world that need it.
Oh, that's really cool. I like that idea. For me, I don't write a whole lot, but I write creative stories. And so I like writing fictional stories and all that. I do a course that Michael E. Gerber has, and as well as his wife, and it's basically like an entrepreneur course. And they talked about how go outside, get in your space, and write down what you're here to do, and write down basically what your superpowers are and how you can change the world. And so I went outside for about 30 minutes. I sat down, I got a towel, laid it out, and I played some music, and I got to writing, and I just wrote until I couldn't anymore. And that's really awesome, being able to have that creative mindset.
I think it's so important. I think it's so important really for everybody to go out and do that, especially if you're creative. But when I was a kid, I had this really cool mom. She's an artist. We're getting ready to go see her art show, which is on black holes, exoplanets, and blue star implosions. So she's super cosmic. Her superpower is the paintbrush, but when I was a kid, she was never afraid of the imaginal world, the mythopoetic imagination. And so she would go out and she would say, okay, go sit down next to that tree and talk to it and write a story. I sent you another story called A Story of Becoming. And that was basically what I did. I just went, I sat down by this apple tree and I'm like, tell me about yourself. And that was the story that came through,
That's cool. That's really cool.
It's a different way of writing. It's not, you're not following an outline. I think you're following your superpowers when you do that.
Exactly. You're following your heart. And I like explaining it as the bright light in the dark tunnel, pretty much.
Definitely.
When you're saying that, you reminded me of our host of Sex, Love, and Superpowers, Tatiana Barronday. We once went to this tree area, and there was a tree that was really good for making tea. And before we went and took a bunch from it, Tati said, well, why don't we ask it if it's okay if we take from it? because we don't know if it's young and we don't know if it still needs that. And so we asked and we heard no. And so like most people wouldn't think to do all that, but I think it's kind of cool that you just sat down and just kind of let your creative juices flow. That's awesome. So
I have another book called, I don't think I sent it to you, but it's called Kachinas Rose. And then there's a longer version called Sparkle and the Gift. But in it, in Kachinas Rose, that's a story about a fairy. And she decides, because she knows the world's in trouble, so her superpower is making blossoms. So she decides to make the most beautiful rose that anyone's ever seen. And so she makes it up. And then the gardener comes over and he sees this rose and he just picks it. And so we have, in the story, we have the pages looking as though they've been torn. And the question is, if you see a beautiful flower, would you just pick it without asking the bush?
That's cool. I like that. And for me especially, it's like, almost I kind of think of like, how does it feel when someone takes your things without asking?
Exactly.
You know? Like for me, if people take my fun toys or something and they go in my room and just start playing with all my things, I don't like that very much. And I'll tell them so. And it goes to the same with other people for sure. Like if you want to be treated that way, treat others the same. But also it goes with the world around us, because like if we want this world to become something beautiful, we have to start treating it like it. So I like that question. If you see a beautiful flower, do you just go and pick it, or do you check in with the bush, like, see, is this okay with you? You know? Exactly.
I mean, we have to realize, in order to do that, we have to realize that nature is alive, and that everything within this world, every hair on our head, every blade of grass has meaning and purpose. And so if we're just walking down a trail and we see a pretty stone and we pick it up, we don't know what that stone might be doing in that spot. We don't know what vibration it's holding, you know? So I think when we become more sensitive and we start asking, then I think the world actually starts opening up for us more, and it reveals more of its magic.
Exactly. And I think that, I'll share this before we go into the breakout, I think that it's cool when you can check in with everyone and realizing that, again, like, it may not have a heart and it may not have lungs, but it's still there and it still lives and it's still a part of your world. And like you said, you don't know what it's doing for that area. And maybe you do, and that's even more of a reason to ask it. And so I think it's cool being able to be that in tuned as well, because sometimes people will be like, all right, I asked. And then they'll be like, they said, yes, I can take all the crystals and I can take everything. But then they're not really tapping into it. They're just listening to their ego. And so it takes like the ability to listen, and also like the courage and strength to ask something and be okay with a no or a not now type thing, and not letting our egos take hold. So
I agree. Yep.
Yeah. I want to talk about this a little bit more, but we need to go into a quick break. Can you tell our listeners where they can go to find out more about you?
Yes, you can visit my website, which is AynCatesSullivan.com, and it's AYNCATES Sullivan.com. And all my books, I have 13 books up there, and go and explore and have some fun.
Awesome. And again, definitely go check her out, because she is so awesome, and she definitely has superpowers. So we've been talking with Ayn Cates Sullivan about how your story can change the world. We'll be right back after the break.
Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Dawn Recla, Executive Director of Superpower Experts, and we want to thank each of you for making Superpower Up the #1 podcast network for personal development and spiritual growth. Because people like you have the courage to say that mindfulness, healthy living, disrupting reality, the pursuit of consciousness, responsible entrepreneurship, and radical parenting matter, we now amass over 1 million downloads monthly in more than 90 countries. Our numbers keep growing because there are far more people willing to live divergently than mass media wants to acknowledge. For you, the change makers, the light bearers, the way showers, we say thank you. If you're ready to take the next step in your evolution, go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the Superpower Quiz. And as Neva Lee Recla, our youngest podcaster, likes to remind us, remember, we all have superpowers and we can change the world.
Okay, we're back and we've been talking with Ayn Cates Sullivan about how your story can change the world. So before we get back into our amazing topic, would you like to do funny FaceTime with me?
Absolutely.
All right. We're going to make our funniest faces in 3, 2, 1. Those are good funny faces. Those are good. I like the full-on movements.
I like to have antlers. I always like the stories of the antlered goddesses, because I always have felt that if they had antlers, they could hear the songs of the stars. They could hear the universe, and that's actually why they had antlers. So a lot of times when I'm out in nature, I'll do this.
That's cool. So I have a question for you. Okay. Do you have like what I would call spirit animals, like, or spirit guides, or whatever your word is for them? Do you feel that with you?
Absolutely. I have some, and they're such good friends, and I've had some for a very, very long time. Like I said, my mom would take me out into nature, so we were always doing vision quests and all sorts of things. So I have one who's really cute. He's a lamb, and he always, when he shows up, it's like, oh, we're supposed to have lightness and fun today, and he's like, and he jumps along. And then I have a dragon. So if we're doing something a little bit more intense, he's like, and she can breathe fire. She totally takes care of me.
That's cool.
So I have a few others too, but those two are primary ones. And then I have a bunch of deities too that come around and help, especially when I'm writing. When I was doing your mom show the other day, Anya Don Recla, that was a great show. It was a lot of fun. And I was feeling so much like a field of love when we were doing the show. And one of the deities that comes around a lot when I'm talking, well, there are two. There's a woman named Danu. She's a really ancient goddess. And she comes around, and I always know it's her. She's very much like Mother Mary. They have very similar energy. And I always smell roses. That's why I know she's there. And then I have another god named Taliesin, who's an old Welsh bard. And
That's cool.
around. He's a little bit like Cosmos. The guy with the cape in Ella's Magic. He's a little bit like Cosmos, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. For me, I'll never forget this part. So it was about maybe 3-4 years ago, and we lived with a few people who made grits, and who's really good into like crystals and all that, and we were sitting in like basically this area right now, and we call it our vortex. It's our spirit energy. We pray, we chant, we channel, and all of the spiritual stuff in here. Yeah. And this is just like our beautiful little, I call it like our hideaway place, kind of. Yeah. And so we were sitting in our vortex. It was, I believe, just my mom and I. And I just got this like sense of like someone there. And I think I had a rough day that day. And so like I was kind of in a grumpy mood and all that. And then I just felt like, oh, there's this energy. And then we looked into it a bit more. And I realized that it was Ganesha. And I just felt like this giant energy. And I sat there and I started crying because I was like, oh, I feel this. I know that like it's here for a reason. And so I have a singing bowl, and I can always tell that Ganesha's with me because I'll hear like a singing bowl playing in the distance, which is really cool. I also have like a bunch of dragons. I have 2 really cute ones that are named Bubblegum, and she's a tiny baby dragon. And then I have one that is named like Love, and they're my little friends, and kind of free. The same for me that happened to you. Like I can always tell that it's playful energy. And then I have a big dragon that's named Ash, and he's full on black, and I can tell he's there when I just feel this like sense of almost like a king, like just this powerful presence. I also, when I was younger, I had a bunch of different dragons. I named one of them Boat and Brick. I couldn't come up with very creative names, so I just named inanimate objects. But we also have these guides called Love that come to us, and they are this group of, I don't even know what they are, like spirit entities is what we can call them. And I had a dream about them. And it really scared me at first because like they didn't look all that friendly. And so we looked into it and realized, oh, they're here to help us. I also had, when I was younger, I used to play in my dollhouse with a spirit. I don't remember who, but I used to play with him. And then I saw this group of 4 people in my room, like scientists in my room one day. And I had known them when I was younger. And then they came back one day. I just saw these 4 floating entities in my room, like these bright, white, glowing like scientists in my room. And I sit up and I hear this like chatter. And I sit up and then all eyes go to me and they're all staring at me. And at the moment, I just hide under my covers. I don't know what else to do. And so in the morning, I talked to my parents about it and they go, oh, the white people. You used to play with them when you were younger. So I have a bunch of like different groups that come to me. And it always starts off, they scare me because when I was younger, I was still at the phase of, oh, ghosts, they're scary. They scare me. Like they aren't here to like protect, you know? And so now when I see energy and beings and stuff, I realize, oh, it's okay. Like they're here for a reason. So
yeah, we've got to learn how to work with our sixth sense. And the thing is, you're lucky with your parents that you have, because they're not saying, oh, you're crazy. They're saying, oh no, there really are these multidimensional realities. And, you know, you can learn how to work with all of them. Because I also, when I was young, I had the same thing. I used to wake up at night, and there were these 4 people that would stand at the foot of my bed and stare at me. It used to terrify me. I would like run to my grandparents' room, and they were like, you're just making this up. I'm like, I'm not making it up. They stand right at the foot of the bed. So finally, we did some research, and we found out that the house had been burned down in the Civil War, and 4 people had died inside the house. And so I started working with this woman. She was this wonderful British woman. She was a healer. And she said, oh, well, Ayn's just a seer. So what we have to do is just let her talk to the people, because they've just come to her because she knows that she knows how to cross them to the other side. And then the light beings showed up. I call them my council of 9. And they're like 9 beings that show up, and they go, okay. And they take people when people need help.
That's cool. I like
Isn't that cool? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a superpower, though, I think, you know, to be able to help people in multi-dimensions of reality.
Yeah. I agree. Like, pretty much everything's a superpower. It's just how you use it that turns it into one.
So if you use something for the good, so if you use something for the good of humanity, that's a superpower. Yeah.
I would call like other ones just like things you can do, or like powers.
Right.
But superpower is like, you can do it. Like you help others with it. Yeah. I remember there was a time that when it was a few years ago, and there was a situation of, I felt like this presence in me. Like, like
inside
I felt
you or outside?
Inside, like
inside,
and like surrounding me, like and I realized, and so at first I talked to my parents because I was like, all right, this is scaring me. I feel like a spirit entity inside of me, and I don't like it. And then they said, well, why don't you ask it what it's here to do? And I was like, oh, I should do that. So sure enough, I asked it, and I heard the sense of like it was a person at the time, so they had passed somehow. And then I was like, well, why would you come into my body? So I asked, why did you choose me? Because I don't like it. Like, I don't like feeling like now I'm handling 2 other spirits, and you know. And so after a while, like it almost felt like my arm would start moving, or like I would just feel like a tingle down my arm, or I'd feel something in my presence. I don't know how to explain it. I just did. And then after a while, at first I let it happen. At first I was like, okay, well, I guess you can see what it's like being a kid. Then I was like, but on one condition, ask me first. And then after a while, it just got to a point of, I can't do this anymore. It was like mentally like breaking me down. And so I said, because like that's a huge burden to put on somebody, especially if it was like originally a human and stuff, and I'm still working all that stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just said, and after a while, I said, go find somebody else. I said, thank you for the experience, not into it again. Go find somebody else who's actually more willing. And then they left.
And they left. Yeah. I think it's important to remember, especially when you're as sensitive as you are, and I am too, is that we have free will. And so there are entities, people die and no one crosses them over. No one prays for them, to cross to the other side. And so they jump on to light beings, people that have superpowers, right? They jump on because they're looking for a ride. And so usually we can ask them to, but sometimes they don't want to go. They're earthbound. They don't want to go anywhere. And so and it's our free will. We can decide at any moment whether, okay, yeah, you can carry on riding with me, or nope, which is exactly what you did, which was really smart. So I've had a few instances like that. It was a really scary one. You want to hear a scary one?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So my parents have a house that's quite haunted, or it was quite haunted when especially the cabin. And when anyone would sleep in there, something would come and grab them by the throat. But I would go in and nothing would happen. I would say, yeah, I can see, because I see spirits. So I was like, well, I see that there's a guy here who used to be a slave, and he's here, but he doesn't seem to really want to talk to me. And then, so this kept happening. And finally I was like, this is really just not okay. So I asked him to come into me and tell me why he was so upset. And he showed me that he had been hung. He had this noose around his neck. And he asked me please to take it off. And so I took the noose off of him, and he just absolutely filled with love, and then crossed with the angels into the light. And no one's ever had a problem with him since then. And I was like, the reason he kept grabbing people was everyone would get scared, but he was trying to let them know that he had this thing that he couldn't get rid of around his neck. That's the way he was trying to communicate.
That's cool.
I think everybody was like, whoof,
It would be. Yeah. And sometimes, I wouldn't say that there's bad spirits. I would say that they're just, misunderstood. Because in that situation, he wasn't doing it to, try to kill somebody. He was doing it because he had an issue. And so, also it's you don't know what happened if they were actually in a physical human working body. You don't know what they went through. And you don't know what got them to this point. And so, I'm kind of realizing that, sometimes they're just misunderstood. But also, if it affects you more than it should, tell them to go. Just say, nope, I'm not. No, just leave. And, sometimes they're a little bit mischievous, and that's why I like playing with fairies and spirits and stuff like that, because they have that, kid-like energy, but sometimes they just forget to listen. And so, something we did once, and this was with the same situation, we put salt in my front door, around my front door to my room, and then we put a little bit in my bed to help kind of release some of the spirit energies. And we also took a bunch of crystals and laid them around that area, because it just got to the point where no, I couldn't anymore. And that's okay, because sometimes we just need that.
But that's actually, it's a good thing for people that are listening to know that, because a lot of my son, for instance, when he was young, he also sees spirits, and he's similar to you in some ways. So he would have lights that would come and work on him when he was ill, and he would get scared at night. And so we would always ask that he had 4 angels standing in the corners of his room, and then we would put bowls of salt. You can also do witch hazel, salt or witch hazel, either one. And it creates this citadel, it creates this dome or a vortex of light, and then he could sleep. But if I forgot to do it, you would hear him in the middle of the night, running down, running down the hall. I was like, oh, I forgot to do the salt,
I remember it was quite a few years back. I was really young, and I was at my grandparents', and I had burnt my foot, significantly burnt my foot. And it got to the point where I couldn't walk on it. My parents had to fall and wash it, wrap it, and whatever bandage it's called. And at the time, especially, like, I was really little, and so I didn't really know how to balance.
Yeah.
And so I was hobbling around, and then we asked, please just, like, come and help us. No matter who it is, just come so she's better. And I think this is part of the reason I'm such a quick healer. And my parents said that they saw, like, Mary in the room.
Nice.
And they saw, like, a bunch of spirits. And then in the morning, I could totally walk on it. It didn't hurt or anything. And now, like, the only times I've been significantly sick or injured, really, my life is, like, 2 times over the past 10 years. And so
Excellent.
that's kind of cool.
That is. Do you want to hear one? Can I tell? Do we have time for me to tell one healing story?
Oh, yeah.
A quick one. Okay. So I was with my son William, and he was about, I don't know, maybe 11, 10, maybe 10, and he came in when he would get scared. Like even sometimes, even if we put the 4 angels and the dome around, he would say, "I want to sleep with you because nobody bothers you." So he would come and sleep at the end of the bed. But I definitely set a very strong field.
Oh.
But he was down there and he said, "Mom, I'm not feeling good. My tummy really hurts." And I was like, "What's going on?" He goes, "I don't know." So I got up and I went and I was sitting by his head, just rubbing his head, because at the time he had this tendency to get migraines. So I was just kind of touching his head. And these lights, it was dark in the room, but the lights went on. And he goes, "Why did you turn on the light?" And I looked. And it wasn't a light bulb. It was actually a very bright orb, and it was bright enough to shine light into the room. Mm-hmm. And I looked at it, I was like, "No, William, it's not. I didn't turn the lights on. Look." And he turned around and looked at it, and he went, "Oh, it's beautiful." And it went into his head, and it went all the way down through his body, and then it just disappeared.
That's cool.
Said, "Isn't that cool?" And I said, "So how are you?" And he goes, "I'm fine. I'm totally fine." He just went to sleep.
I remember one time, my parents and I were in a hotel room, I think, and we were all sleeping on the bed. And I was like a toddler at the time. And I had this Tinkerbell nightlight. And so it was like a picture of Tinkerbell, and then she was like entrapped in this nightlight kind of type thing. And we're all still awake and like about ready to fall asleep, and then and the nightlight's plugged in and on, and then I just see this like exact Tinkerbell shape of a shadow, and it's like it flies over to the nightlight, and I go, and I wake up my parents. I go, "Look," and then it just flies away, and so that's kind of cool.
That's very cool. Yeah. You've had encounters with fairies then. Have you met fairies?
Not really up close and personal. My dad has. He explained to me that I have a fairy house that a friend and I made, and I'm probably going to put it back outside. We also have this black dragon statue, and its head turns sometimes.
Oh, cool.
And so like it's like this, and then sometimes it goes like this, and sometimes its tail moves and all that. So yes, I've definitely encountered them, but I wouldn't say I've been able to like full on.
Can I share my first encounter with a fairy?
Yes, please do.
So I was in Ireland, and Ireland's really known for its fairies, you know? Mm-hmm. So, but at the time I'd never seen a fairy. I'd heard about them, but I'd never actually seen one. But I was there, and I was collecting folklore. And I was in Galway, and it's like Galway's like right against the Atlantic Ocean. It's like the west of Ireland, and like the wind blows quite strong, and the trees you can hear them kind of, you hear this kind of thing. And so I'm sitting by this lake, and it's actually a turlaw. It's like a seasonal lake, and it's where W.B. Yeats used to write his very famous poetry. And I'm sitting there going, I completely understand why you would write poetry by this lake, because it's magic. It is pure magic. It's like some sort of magic vortex. I'm sitting really quietly. Nobody's there. And then this bubble, it's about the color of your cape. And it comes along like this, and it's giggling. And I look, and inside this blue bubble is a fairy who looks a little bit like Tinkerbell. And then another one comes up, and like there are 2. And they're both looking at me, and I'm looking at them, and I'm going, have I lost it? Is this actually really happening? Am I actually seeing fairies? And they giggled, and then they just went like right on down the lake. I went, I just met two fairies. Okay.
See, you are very nice to them. I would have just been like, oh my goodness, will you come to my house with me? Will you travel with me? Can we become best friends? What do you eat? How do you live? Do you have a pet? And then I'll just like rapid fire ask them questions, and then they would probably just laugh at me and walk away.
I don't know. I mean, I've gone back since then. I've never met those same fairies again, but I've had other fairy encounters. But the first time I think it was so surprising because I wasn't really sure that there was such a thing as a fairy, that it was a real. So I just had to like incorporate that for a while. Like, oh yeah, there are such things as fairies. Okay, got it. So the next time I had a fairy encounter was with a very, very large fairy. It was 13 feet tall.
That's a thing?
That's a thing. He was called one of the she, and he was white. But he was beautiful and so kind and so sweet. And he was absolutely sensitive to the earth, to everything. He had long pointy ears, and he was bald. And, but he was so sensitive, and he understood the soil and how the soil worked. And he knew the gnomes and how the gnomes care for the seeds. And he knew the sylphs, which are the undines, the water fairies, like the ones I first met were water fairies, undines. And then he introduced me to the sylphs, which are the air fairies. And then they're called salamanders, but they're fire fairies. So he was showing me how they all work. So he started to explain things a little bit more. I asked him if he would share his name, and he said no. They never like to share their name because then they're afraid you'll have a power over them if you have their name. But they're very, very lovely. They appear in my story. I write about them in my fictional books. But I have to say that nature's so alive, and if we're not afraid to step into our mythic imagination, if we're not afraid to see with our extra senses, then oh my gosh, we would live so differently in this world. Do you think we would do any of the crazy stuff that's going on? We wouldn't. We would just change the world like this. We'd live in a completely different place. So I really appreciate everything that you're doing and sharing, because maybe it will help some other people, who really have their sixth sense or seventh sense on, to go to, instead of like Ella trying to hide it under her hat or under her, her headband. Instead of hiding it, maybe they'll be willing to put their cape on and step out and be truthful about who they are. So thank you so much for being you.
Thank you. I have two more questions before we wrap up.
Okay.
My first question is about the fairy. So did he actually talk, or was it like telepathy, or how did that work?
It's a little bit like when I speak to a tree. If I'm gonna sit with a tree, and sometimes when I first start talking to a tree, I'll speak aloud, because sometimes trees are sleepy, and when you speak to them, they go, somebody's listening. And then I share my energy with it, and then the tree will share an energy with me, and then we're connected telepathically. So after that, the communication's telepathic. And it's the same with when I'm working with a fairy. I might speak to them aloud, but I don't want to scare them. And so I need to stay very, very receptive and loving, and just stay in a very high space. Because if I drop into fear, I'll lose the connection. And if I can stay in a space of love, they can handle being in the same vibratory level as I can. So we can have more of a conversation. But it's hard to stay on the same vibratory rate. I think that takes practice.
Yeah, I definitely think it would.
Yeah.
Also, was it like a full-on body, or was it like a spirit you saw?
No, he had a full-on body just like anybody. He had to sit down so I could talk to him. When I met him, I was in an ancient cairn. I had to crawl into it. And I knew that it was famous for the she, that people had encounters there. So I sort of had a heads up. And I asked to meet one. And I didn't know if I would or not. But he said, "Why are you here?" And I said, I came to meet you. I really want to befriend you. Humans always want something, he said. I said, no, really honestly, it's just coming for friendship. I want to understand more about the earth. And when I started talking about the earth and saying I really wanted to understand more and how to live more in alignment with the earth, he became much more friendly. And so he started to interact with me.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So how would you say your story changes the world?
Well, since I'm a writer, I mean, I understand that the wisdom of the ages can be carried through story form. It really literally can. Like we have Ella's magic, and Ella and her story shares what's happening to her as she starts to present her skills and her gifts. And Ella's story is not so different from my own story. I mean, I was terrified to tell my friends at school that I saw ghosts or that I did all this wild spiritual work. So it took me a long time to go, as a matter of fact, I engage in multiple realities all the time, every day. But finally it's been okay. And the more that I've shared it with people, the more they've gone, I do it too. I didn't want to tell anybody, but I do it too.
Oh my goodness. It's hard, and it's kind of scary. Like for me, I see energy, and for me it appears in like a bunch of small, very tiny rainbow dots, and I just see it moving around people. I can choose not to focus on it, but it's really hard not to, because like it's in everything. And I remember when I first discovered it, I was terrified.
Right.
Because it started off like really big orbs, and sometimes I'll still see like orbs about that big, and they just like appear, and I'll see them in the like corner or something, and I don't know what to do with them. Then I realize, like these are just energy balls, maybe a pent up energy and all that. But when I first discovered that I could see it, I was so terrified, and I ran into my parents' room. I brought our dog, like I put her in the cage, and I ran to the room. And I go, I don't know what I'm seeing, but it's scary. And like it's rainbow dots. I don't know how to describe it, but it is scary, and I don't know if it's a problem.
Yeah.
And so after a while, like there was quite a few times where my dad or my mom would have to come sit out in our vortex with me and go, it's okay. It's just energy. You are fine. Yeah. And then I would just go back. So now that's where I go to if I like hear noise outside or something. I'll go to, it's energy. And I'll do a little prayer, say, watch over us. And I'll just like place my little angels and all my crystals and stuff in our areas of our house, and we're good.
Do you know, do you see auras around people too?
A little bit. I don't really see that. I see just, again, energy. And I can, I would say I can almost read people's minds. Like, it's pretty obvious because also my parents were spies. And so, like, I've learned how to tell if somebody's lying to me. Sure. But also I can tell I can tell that this person is off. Because, like, if a friend of mine is taking something out on me, and I know that they're usually a really nice person, maybe they're having a hard day. I can read people's energy more than I can read thoughts, though.
That's interesting. Do you know the term for people like us? Do you know what it's called? Synesthesia. Synesthesia. It's actually a term. They had to add it. I think they added it to the DSM-4. It's called, we're synesthetes. So they're the people. It's actually a term. It's a real thing. It's finally been recognized, because when I was your age, nobody had recognized it. But I also see auras around people, and the thing, and you can read it. It's and the thing that people don't like about it is that when you see someone's aura, you can tell the story of their unfolding soul, and there's actually no secrets because it's all right there. But yeah, it's called synesthesia, and it's a gift. It's a superpower.
That's interesting that they came up with a name for it. I just call it people's gifts, or sometimes if I see kids with it, I'll say crystal children or something like that. Yeah. But that word sounds almost like they're trying to name it into a disease.
No.
But
They actually think it was to take it out of the synesthesia was to normalize it. So that
to make it into something that people actually can understand.
They can recognize it. So it's like, I guess people say dyslexia. Is that well, no, it's not really a disease. It's just people that read a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a synesthete, somebody, I think it's actually a gift. It's actually a gift is really what it is. If you know how to work with it, it's a gift.
Exactly.
And so if you're a synesthete, it means that instead of having 5 senses, you're operating off of 6 or 7 senses. You're more into your multi-dimensional understanding. And what I do like about it is it's now recognized as a thing. There are synesthetes.
For me, I kind of like it being a little bit different because I like being out of the ordinary. Like, guaranteed I'll be the person who will show up and be completely different from everybody else in the crowd. But for me, it's like, awesome, I have superpowers and I can talk about it. And it's a weird thing. And like for me, when people look at me weirdly and like if we'll be in public and I'll be goofing off and I'll be being a dork, or like I color my hair a lot, and that's not a very common thing for most kids. And so people kind of like do that glare and like try to figure out what like my purpose is. And then I whisper to my friends and to my parents, I go, yes, they looked at me weirdly.
And I have a question for you, because I don't understand it. It's because actually there are no 2 people that are alike on the planet. Everyone's completely unique. My question for you is, why would kids want to be the same?
Because that's a program. Because in my opinion, it's a program. Because I also believe that like God and the divine made you who you are. Like, I'm different from you. You're different from me. We may still have we may share similar insights on things, and we may have similar opinions, but at the end of the day, we're 2 completely different people.
Absolutely.
The thing is, when you're different, or you look different from somebody, or you act different from somebody, people think it's bad because we haven't been trained that different can be a good thing. And it's scary for a lot of people to have that change,
Right.
So that's my opinion. But if anybody else has other opinions, I think that it is truly something that has been put into our minds. And if our parents were trained that way, good chances our grandparents are trained that way, and they're going to try to train us that way. But we don't have to. And also there's a way of doing it. There's like a fine line in between full on rule breaking and not being very nice. And then there's like this phase of, I'm going to go off and do my own thing. Yeah, I'm still going to be respectful.
Yes.
For me, at the end of the day, it comes back to, are you being respectful to the people on the earth and things around you?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We want to practice no harm for sure.
Exactly.
And goodness when we can. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
thank you so much. It's just been lovely.
Thank you. These conversations fuel me up. I'm gonna have a great day. Do you have any last insight based on spirits, or based on channeling, or life, or how people's stories can change their world? And maybe talk a little bit about how somebody's life or somebody's choices can impact their future.
Well, I like the way we started when we were talking about going to sit by a tree and listen to its story. I really love to go to ancient places and sit inside the cairns or by a stone or someplace. And I mean, it can really be anywhere. Usually it's in nature, any place in nature. But I think it's really lovely when we can go do that. And if we can stay out of fear, like I said, if you go into fear, you'll contract and you'll block yourself from the energy. So if you can take a few deep breaths, and then a tree is usually one of the easiest ones to open to. The Druids love the oak. Apple trees are lovely. Orange trees are lovely. But all trees really, pine trees I love too. They have huge hearts, So if you can go and just start to open up in that multidimensional way and just feel the love of a tree. And then from that, you might, if you have a pet, you might just see if you can commune with an animal. Like I commune with all my animals by send them images and they go, and then they send them back. And then they're really confused when people don't do that to them. Like, why aren't they talking to me?
Yeah, I have conversations with my dog all the time.
Oh yeah. So they just send you this like stream of imagery and you send it back and then you're engaged. And so to understand that we can communicate all the time and then, to try to, we can start to engage those worlds more and more and more because like you said, there are spirits that hold the field of love. I mean, and to stand like what I was doing with Tanya the other day, we were just standing in this field of love. It's incredibly powerful. It's incredibly healing. And I believe it's the way forward for humanity.
Me too.
Yeah.
That's great advice. As well as trees may have little spirits and they may have maybe little gnomes or fairies around them. You just have to tap into it. Because again, if you go into fear, your chances it's not going to happen. No matter how much you're like, I want to meet you, I want to talk to you, even then it's going into being selfish, and the spirits and fairies and stuff aren't going to have that. They'll be like, no, that's not my energy, and they'll leave. And I've had that personal experience. So again, just don't go into fear. And like you said, I think we could have a really amazing world and life if we don't. So thank you so, so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed talking with you. Can you remind people one last time where they can go to find out everything about you?
Yes, you can go into AynCatesSullivan.com. All my kids' books are up there for all superpower kids. So it's AYN, AynCatesSullivan.com. And I have lots of audios and different things people can follow on there too. But yeah, Sparkle, all the Sparkle books are about young girls with superpowers, and then there's Ella's Magic, of course, too, for the people who are ready to peel back the headband.
Awesome. I will definitely be checking out like all of your books because you are so amazing. And again, thank you for coming on to my show. And kids, remember that we all have superpowers and we can change the world through our stories. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Superpower Up Podcast, Superpower Kids Edition. Go now to superpowerkids.com and discover your superpowers today.